Howdy, folks. My name is Andrew, and I am the host of a fairly large podcast. It's called Fort Worth Roots. My good friend Casey Smith reached out to me and said, hey, I want to do something special for my father's birthday. Is there any chance you could come out and record? And I thought this sounded like a great idea. This was his birthday present to his father. And I didn't know what we were going to get into, but by the end of it, I knew that this recording is one of the most special ones I've ever done. And I'm really glad that we got the opportunity to sit down and do this recording. Big thank you to Casey and Bill, because it's not always easy bringing up all these things from your past and talking about them so publicly. So usually we open the episode with music and our sponsors and all that good stuff, but this is a private recording we did for our new friend Bill, and I hope you guys appreciate this and walk away with a better understanding of our friend Bill. And I think the underpinning message here is don't give up. I think that's I think that's the full theme of this. That is enough talking out of me. If you guys would like any information about Fort Worth Roots or how to do a recording like this with someone for their birthday or special event, you can always email us at media@fortworthroots.com. Let's get into this recording. Usually we have intro music and we talk about our sponsors and all that stuff, but like I was telling Bill whenever we sat down a minute ago, this is the first time I've done something like this. Casey asked me to come out and do a little recording with Bill, and I think the goal, as far as he was telling me, is just kind of get a little bit of your life story, and we'll just kind of see where this goes.
All right, sounds good.
So, Bill, where were your parents from?
Well, my father was from a little town called Ethan, South Dakota.
Okay.
Which is about 60, 70 miles west of Sioux Falls, where I was born and raised.
Okay.
And my mother was from Battle Creek, Michigan.
Okay.
And they met in Battle Creek, Michigan during World War II, when my dad was stationed there.
Was he Army?
Yes, he was a doctor.
Okay.
He was in the Army, and he was at Percy Jones Hospital there.
Mm-hmm.
And they got married, moved initially to Chicago because he did his residency there at Cook County Hospital. And then they moved to Sioux Falls. And I was born in Sioux Falls in 1954.
That's just a few days ago.
Yeah, just a few days ago. Actually, it was exactly 71 days ago yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
And cheers.
And that's actually why we're doing this. My son bought this for me for my birthday.
Yes, sir. Yeah, he threw the idea at me, and I thought that is really cool. So, I don't know. This might be something we do now, but I'm glad to be sitting here with Bill Smith, and this being our first time doing something like this. So, what brought your family to Texas, or did you grow up in Michigan?
No, I grew up in Sioux Falls.
Oh, Sioux Falls.
I got married in Sioux Falls. My first child was born in Sioux Falls, and that's Casey's sister. Probably important to back up to somewhere around age 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, my household with myself and my 5 siblings had become very chaotic and very unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
My folks finally wound up divorcing in 1969, and I was 13 years old. 3 girls went with my mom, 3 boys went with my dad, and the family was split down the middle.
Divorce wasn't nearly as common back then as it is nowadays.
No, it wasn't. It really wasn't, actually. Yeah. And so my mom wound up eventually moving to Texas, and that's how I wound up here in 81.
Was that straight to Fort Worth?
82. Yeah, I came straight to Fort Worth. I lived in Missouri for about 4 years between Sioux Falls and here.
Mm-hmm.
So
whenever you got to Fort Worth, how old would that make you? That'd make you probably 15?
When I got to Fort Worth?
Uh-huh.
Oh, no. No, that was I got to Fort Worth in '82, and I was born in '54.
Oh, 82. Okay.
Yeah, I was 28.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I lose a point for math. All right.
Or was it 28? 38.
Somewhere in there.
Let me think. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get it.
So you're looking for a job then, aren't you?
When I get here?
Uh-huh.
Actually, no. And it'd probably be best to back way up and kind of move on with the progression of things. You know, like I like to look at it as the seasons in my life.
Yeah. So 13 and the divorce. Right.
And I think a couple things I'd like to focus on, and I think that this is what Casey was wanting to hear, was more personal things in my life rather than so much geographic or
sure.
And that'll all kind of blend together, I think, as we talk.
Yeah.
I want to back clear up to when I said 6, 7 years old, when it was a chaotic household.
Yeah.
And I was, to say the least, a very miserable child. I felt very unloved. I had a very strong feeling of not fitting in or belonging anywhere. School, I don't care where it was. I just didn't fit in.
Yeah.
And very early in school, they diagnosed me as dyslexic, which today it'd be ADHD. But in any event, I didn't learn like the rest of the kids.
Yeah.
In fact, the state even sent me to a reading research academy just outside of Boston between 7th and 8th grade for the summer. So now that I've established I'm a little kid that doesn't fit in, probably one of the a pivoting event that took place when I was 10 years old. It was Christmas time. We had driven to Ethan, South Dakota, to that area where my grandmother had passed away. My grandfather was in a nursing home. And it was December in South Dakota, right? Actually, I think it was Christmas Eve. Yeah, it was. And I was riding in the third seat in a 1963 Pontiac station wagon, looking out the back window coming home from the nursing home, and it was snowing, not quite blizzardy, but it was snowing real good. And as we were going down the highway in rural South Dakota, I saw this young boy walking along the side of the road. And he was carrying a gun and had some rabbits in the other hand. And as a 10-year-old, all I could think of was, golly, he's like my age. And it just fascinated me, the whole thought of that. And I just kind of drifted off and imagined how much his life has got to be so different than mine.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it was Christmas Eve. And that night for Christmas, I got a AM radio, a white Bakelite AM radio. And I laid in bed and listened to that radio for hours and hours. And the news came on. And in the news, it talked about a 10-year-old boy that was struck by a car walking home from rabbit hunting. And that made just a huge impression on me. And I guess that kind of solidified my marriage to that radio. Mm-hmm. And that radio became my first form of escape. And I could turn that radio on, and many times I would listen to it all night. Mm-hmm. And I started listening to Wolfman Jack and KOMA, and I remember the night Nat King Cole died, just stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it just became my form of escape as a 10-year-old boy. Yeah. And then by 13, my folks had divorced, and I had moved on. There's another thing I'd like to bring up at this point was about that time in my life. Actually, I think it was a year or two later, about 12 years old, shortly before my folks divorced. I had some friends sleep over. We were sleeping in the basement, and one of them brought some model glue.
Okay. And
we huffed glue.
Oh my God.
And I absolutely fell in love with it.
Oh, no.
I mean, this was escape from all the pain, all the rejection I felt.
Uh-huh.
And the next day I went out and I bought a bunch of model glue, and I just went off by myself and in the park and huffed glue.
Oh my goodness.
And I found my first form of escape, and real escape. And that, as life progressed, led to a lot worse forms of escape.
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of a new season in my life, a season of finding ways to escape. And so my folks divorced. I'm becoming a young teenager. And freshman year in high school. And I'm sure I did this just to for acceptance from my peers. But I called in a bomb threat.
Oh my God. What year do you think this was?
This would have been in 70, probably 70.
And that is something that had to be, I would think, very uncommon, right?
Yeah, it was kind of, there'd been a few around the country, and it was, and I called it in from the school, from the payphone in the school. And then me and a friend, we skipped out of school, and I called in another one. Telling him, and what's really weird is that we laughed about it because I said, this is the Green Hornet, 20 minutes to go, let it ride and watch it blow. Well, they wound up getting the National Guard out there and evacuating the school and everything.
Oh wow!
And needless to say, I got caught and went to detention center for quite a while.
Was it your buddy? Did he turn you in?
No, I turned myself into. This was a Catholic school. I turned myself into a priest the night before. I went up to the night before I got busted, the night of the event. And I went to the church and I confessed to the priest, and he told me to come in his office in the morning because he was at the school, and we would deal with it. Well, I got to school. The police were there. They arrested me. He had turned me in. I mean, I never got any credit for going to him, but that didn't matter.
And there's supposed to be some kind of code of conduct here with priests. He wasn't supposed to tell
think
anybody.
So. But so anyway, that kind of led to another season of my life. And it was shortly after I got out of detention center and stuff. I was hitchhiking, and we did that a lot in the 70s. And this girl picked me up, and we were talking, and she found out that I was, and by that time I had gained the name Billy the Bomber. And she found out that I was Billy the Bomber. And she says, well, you've got to come up to the Gray House. And by then I knew what the Gray House was, and it was just a really well-known drug house. And a lot of people went to the Gray House to get their acid or whatever. Mm-hmm. Primarily acid was our drug of choice then. And so she said, you got to come up and meet Don and Chester. And it was Don Lester and Chester Murdoch. So Chester and Lester. And so I said, okay. And literally when I walked in there, it was an upstairs in an old house. And Don Lester was standing in front of a chalkboard, needless to say, buck naked. And there was a bunch of people sitting on the floor, and he was teaching revolution.
Naked.
Yeah.
In the buff.
Yeah. So this I could identify with for some reason. And I actually very shortly wound up moving in with them. And this became my family. And this was the first place in my lifetime in my life I felt accepted. I felt a part of something.
Was this after high school?
This would have been after I quit high school.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I took an interim. I wasn't going to school. Let's put it that way. I did wind up going back and getting my GED. But so I moved in with them, and we literally had plans to federal buildings. I became on the police's radar big time. In fact, they had because I later became really good friends with a cop after my life changed. And he was telling me that they had pictures of me in all the cop cars, and they knew who all of us were. And but anyway, so that was that season of my life when I finally found a family. And you read about people that get involved with like James Manson, and I can understand how that happens. I totally do, because we all have, I think, inherent need to belong and to be a part of something.
Sure.
I think it's, I'm trying to think it is who has a line in this song. But anyway, it was, I'm trying to think of it's catchy, but it's basically, he left home and joined the circus to find a home, and the circus became his home.
Yeah.
But we all need something like that, some family is the best way to put it. So, by the time 1972 rolls around, I'm 17 years old, and I'm driving at night, and I'm coming from a party, and I had quite a bit of drugs in the car, and a police car pulls out behind me, and I want to just backtrack a little bit. I had met a guy on a particular night, and this was prior to the night that the night in 72. And I was doing some acid, and I was in the downtown area of Sioux Falls. And I was walking around, and for people that have never done acid, they probably can't imagine this feeling. If you've done hallucinogenic, you can relate to it. But it became basically what we would call a bad trip. But all the buildings in the town started slowly leaning toward me, like they were going to fall on me and caving in on me. But they would never hit me. It was just this constant ongoing, and like all the cars would be coming straight at me, but they would never hit me, and just this extreme paranoia feeling. And I walked around the edge of downtown where there was an alleyway.
Away from the buildings?
Away from where the downtown was actually behind me. And I was looking out over, there was a river and a viaduct and railroad tracks. And then there was this feed mill. And I'm looking, and this feed mill starts falling toward me. And I logically tried to figure out, how am I going to stop this? And it dawned on me. I looked, and there's this viaduct that went over these railroad tracks and then the river. And I thought, I could jump off the viaduct. I mean, I was going to kill myself, not because of depression or anything else. It became the logical way to solve this problem. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember the exact order of events, but somehow upon me getting up on that bridge and preparing to jump, of which is something I wouldn't have even sat and hesitated to do, because it would be like, I got to go to the bathroom and run and go to the bathroom.
Yeah, crossing the street.
I was going to jump off this bridge and end this thing. And somehow that night, I wound up at a house by a man named Rich, and I won't give you his last name. And him and his wife, I later found out, were very known for just helping people, especially hippies in this situation and stuff. Mm-hmm. He got a hold of a doctor and got me some downers. I stayed at their house for 3 days. But he was a Christian man. And I had run from Christians like you can't believe, because I had people trying to shove it down my throat every which way, and I thought, there's no way this is for me. Mm-hmm. But I could tell that, first of all they did was love and accept me. That was it. They didn't try to convert me. They didn't tell me I had to change. They didn't do anything. They just accepted me. But I knew what he had was real. At least it looked real to me. So now we'll jump to the point where I'm driving down the street, and I see a cop pull out from behind me. So I make a left turn, I remember clearly, and kind of accelerated, and then I see that the cop made the left turn, was behind me. Pretty soon his lights were on, and I took off, and it was a relatively long, high-speed chase that involved multiple police cars by the time it was over. And I remember during this chase, the thing that I finally grasped was the fact that I had been running all my life. In one way or another, I had been running. I had been trying to escape, and I'd been running. And I just finally said, okay, God, if you're real, if what Rich had was real, I want it. I give up. I'm not running anymore. And I pulled the car over, not to mention the fact that there were 11 police cars surrounding me when I pulled the car over, so I wouldn't have made it another 100 yards. And, of course, when I stepped out, they all had guns drawn and everything, because they didn't know what I was running. They didn't know what to expect. But needless to say, I had quite a bit of drugs. I was 17, and this was in November, and I turned 18 in February. So I wound up going to jail. I spent about 6 or 8 months, I can't remember exactly, in jail. I went to court. I was 18, but they tried me as a juvenile because it happened before my 18th birthday. So this begins another season in my life. And in this next season, when I got out of jail, I never went back ever and looked up my old friends. It's like I was dead to them. Mm-hmm. And I had gotten involved with a group of, back then AA didn't know what to do with hippies. So this one guy was really a cool man. He started a little group. Part of it was because his son was one of us, of young people, AA type meetings, but it was just, there was about 5 or 6 of us, and we would just meet once a week and talk, and they kind of became my friends. And then I started spending my nights in coffee shops, and then eventually there was some really cool coffee houses that came about in the 70s, and got real involved with that, and hanging out at coffee houses. And so that began a different season in my life, a season in my life where, for one thing, I didn't have this desperate feeling that I needed to relieve pain, that I needed to escape. I had no desire to ever be stoned again, because I finally got to a point in my life where I really liked feeling in control and sober and at peace with myself. And so that pretty much ended that portion of my life, and I moved on.
Never had any trouble with addiction after that?
No.
That's awesome.
I stayed pretty active in AA for 4 years. The first time I had a drink since then was on my anniversary, on my honeymoon with Casey's mom, my first wife. And we had a couple drinks. That was it. Never bothered me. We didn't have alcohol in the house when my kids were growing up.
Didn't go fly off the hinges after a couple drinks?
No. and ever since then, I've had a drink or two, a beer here and there, beer there. I refuse to do a shot. Yeah. If I'm on a second or third beer and I start to feel buzz, I stop. I hate that feeling, because there again, that's the feeling that I fought so hard to, that was so hard to get rid of when I made the change. And so, I'll get together, especially with my brothers and stuff, and we'll have, they'll get out a bottle of whiskey and stuff, but I stop. I just, and I'm fine with them doing it. I don't care. We have fun,
That's pretty incredible, because you hear it time and time again. Alcoholics, once they start, they just can't stop.
Yeah, and it's something that I hesitate to even say, because I would never want to tell an alcoholic
that it's okay.
That in 4 years you'll probably be okay. No, I think the difference was, it wasn't so much the addiction to the alcohol. It was whatever I did, whether it was huff and glue, alcohol, acid. If I did acid, I wanted to make sure I had enough that after I peaked and was on my way down, I could drop again. Whatever it was to get completely screwed up. Mm-hmm. That's all I wanted to do, was black out. That's it.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't that I did it for enjoyment even so much.
Yeah.
It was just to completely escape who I was.
Yeah.
And once I became at peace with who I was, it just didn't do anything for me.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I think there are definitely people like that. I mean, I know for a fact there are. Mm-hmm. Other people that have had similar experiences. So now I'm 18 years old. Don't go to school. I'd quit high school by this point, and like I said, I got a GED. I'm on probation, which that was going to be for the next 5 years. But so I get a job. And one of the first jobs I got was working on TV towers.
Okay.
And
climbing up the things?
Yeah, I remember I went to talk to the guy that owned the company, their shop, and I said I wanted to go to work for him. And he says, "What makes you think you can work on TV towers?" And I just said, "I don't know. Every time I see them, I just want to climb them." And he says, "What makes you think I can climb them?" I said, "I just know I can." And he said, "Well, I don't really need anybody right now, And I hung around, and he says, "Well, what are you doing? And I says, I really do want to go to work for you working on TV towers. And he said, okay. He says, be back here at 4 o'clock with enough clothes for a couple of days. So I went home, packed a bag, and went to work for him. And long story short, I wound up becoming a foreman. We traveled all over the country working on 2,000-foot towers, and I absolutely loved it. It was a season in my life. It lasted about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I knew it was time. We had a couple of really close calls. So me and a buddy, we decided to quit. He was on my crew, and one of the guys on my crew took over my foreman position. And the buddy and I quit together, and we both got a job at another big construction company. And about 2 weeks afterwards, he decided he was going to go back to work on towers. It does get in your blood. It really does. It's there's something about it. And he fell. And he actually was riding a load line, and the load line operator wasn't paying attention. And so he rode what's called the headache ball. It's a big, heavy ball at the end of the cable on the load line. So he rode it to the ground and landed sitting up and broke his back and wound up paralyzed. But he lived. And
oh, my God.
So just to finish off that story, the guy that was on my crew that took over my foreman eventually wound up buying the company. And in 2005, him and 4 guys on his crew were on the tower, and the tower collapsed, and they were all killed. And so that's kind of the way that type of business goes. At that time I knew of several that had died. My boss's father fell and was killed. So I knew that, it was a matter of time. The average is 3 years before death or disabling injury.
I had no idea it was that dangerous.
Yeah, and it's changed. I mean, this was before OSHA had their hand on everything.
Yeah. Wow.
So I wind up back in Sioux Falls after that, and I decided that I was just going to go in business for myself. And I'd always had an interest in plants and landscaping and stuff, so I kind of started a little landscape business. And actually, the way it really started was I was we used to have little restaurants in town called Country Kitchens. I don't know if anybody remembers them, but
I feel like we had those in West Texas.
Yeah, they were pretty much all over the country.
Yeah.
Those and Sambo's restaurants. And so I was at the Country Kitchen restaurant drinking coffee, and the manager was there, and I was chatting with him. I said, you really need to do something with the front of this place. He says, I said, I can draw you up something, see what you think. And backing up to high school, in 9th grade, I took shop class, welding, woodworking, and metal fabrication.
Mm-hmm.
I use all of those things every day now. I do steel fabrication. I have a cabinet shop. I do all my own drafting and designing. So that's what I got out of high school. So I drew him up something, wound up selling it to him and redoing the whole front of the Country Kitchen. That led to I wound up doing all the country kitchens in that area.
Nice.
I wound up doing a lot of the Sambo's restaurants. I wound up doing the Burger Kings. And so I evolved into a real business.
Yeah.
And actually at that first country kitchen I was landscaping, that's where I met my first wife, Casey's mom. She came and started working as a waitress while I was working there, and she caught my eye. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the shift, I went in, sat down, or after the end of working, I went in and sat down, and she was on her first shift, and we talked and wound up asking her out. And long story short, about a year later, we got married. So that business evolved. I wound up buying a little nursery there that was going out of business. And then in 70... this was after I was married. It was 79. Yeah, 79, 78. I wound up selling it and buying a nursery in Osage Beach, Missouri on Lake of the Ozarks.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
And had several really good years there. And then in 81, prime rate got up to 21%. The economy was crashing.
In 81.
In 81. It was a real dive. And things were booming in Texas. And my mom lived here in Texas, so I thought, and I had a sister that had moved here. So I wound up moving to Texas. Casey was a newborn baby. And kind of didn't have anything when we moved here because it was literally came here with a station wagon. I had a chainsaw and a wheelbarrow on top of the station wagon. Didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And I printed up some cards, started going door to door. And I think the first year I made $17,000.
Just doing
anything. A lot of tree work, tree trimming, tree work. And that just evolved, and I've been in business since. So actually in 74 was when I actually started in business, and I've been in business since. So over 50 years. And it just evolved.
And now you guys are doing full restorations for some of the historical buildings and homes in the area.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember the Live Oak Music Hall.
Don't know. It doesn't sound familiar.
The Live Oak Music Hall is right on Magnolia there.
Okay.
That was kind of my dream. I designed that and built it.
Is that structure still there?
Yeah. Now it became free play, I think, is what it is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, with the rooftop patio and everything. But that building was a boarded up building. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of a vision I'd had for a long time. And I sold out of it in 2014.
Okay.
And then I think they wound up filing bankruptcy in 16. But so, I've done several restaurants since then, several bars. I just finished building a custom home. Well, it's getting close to. I finished it last July.
And y'all did all the work on McFly's too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did all the patio and all that. Yeah. That was kind of my deal for Casey.
All looks great. Yeah, and I not many people that go in there these days know how bad it was, but I saw that building before it was a church. So it was a bar,
yeah,
and then it was a church, and then you guys got a hold of it, right?
Yeah, actually, I think it had been 2 bars over the years.
Yeah. And
I
just
that's
knew
totally,
at one point it was a church.
That was totally Casey's deal. I mean, I just built the patio for him and the fences and all that stuff for him. So.
Well, it's still there, still looking good.
Yes, it is. I don't know how much time we've got left, but
we've got all the time you need.
One of the things I really want to point out, I guess if there were any few things that I would want someone to take away from listening to this, is if you remember when I started out, I told you I felt like I didn't fit in or I didn't belong anywhere. I just didn't fit. And that haunted me for a big percent of my life.
Yeah.
And there came a time when I realized, you know what? It's okay not to fit in.
Yeah.
I don't fit in, and I'm fine with that now. And at 71 years old, I'm completely at peace with knowing that I don't fit in. I fit in where I'm at right now, and that's all that matters.
Those are the people I gravitate towards.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a fake bone in your body. You're not trying to fake it for anybody.
Yeah, exactly right.
And that's wonderful.
Exactly right.
We need more people like that. I'd like to name this episode Billy the Bomber, with your permission.
That's all right. I've come very close to writing a book, and if I do write a book, it will be with a ghost writer, and my name will not be on it.
Yeah.
But the name of the book would be Would Somebody Please Love Me?
Yeah.
A Boy Named Billy. Because that's what I strive for most, and it was on that night on November 2nd in 1972 that I finally surrendered myself to the Lord and have felt loved ever since.
That's awesome. And probably sounds like it's strongly tied into that couple that saved you whenever you were ready to throw your goofy ass off a bridge.
Yes, very, very much so. Very much so. And in fact, him and his wife they started a deal. We call them the rap sessions, and that's a 70s word there. But he was an artist, and he had an art studio. And on Thursday nights, he just opened up his art studio to rap sessions. Uh-huh. And, basically we're all hippies, back then. And people would just come in and sit all over the place on the floor or whatever until we finally outgrew that. We just talk. He kind of lead the conversations. And the interesting thing was he always had a chair. And then he always sat the chair and nobody sat in it. And that was acknowledging that God was there.
Oh, that's cool.
And we kind of outgrew that, and we just started expanding to different spaces and bigger spaces, and sometimes it'd be outside at a park or something. But yeah, that kind of became my first church.
So you stayed connected with that couple for a while.
Yeah, I completely lost track of him. I tracked him down. Would have been in about, I want to say 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And I Googled him, and he's still an artist, and there was actually a really interesting story about him. And he was in Oregon, on the coast right there where Haystack Rock is, and I can't remember the name of the town. And the story was about him that he painted Haystack Rock every day for 365 days.
Oh, wow.
And it was just kind of an interesting story. So I wound up going out there and hooking up with him, and it was really great. We spent an afternoon with him and his wife. And
just catching up. How long had it been since you'd seen him?
At that point, geez, 40 years, 30-some years, yeah.
And probably picked up the conversation right where you left
off. He remembered me very clearly. And he remembered a lot of
probably some stuff you didn't remember, right?
Transpired in my life back then. So
I wonder how that naked guy that was teaching people about revolution.
I've often wondered about him. I really have. I know that a lot of my friends wound up in prison, and just for people today that don't know what it was like back then, I can remember going to a trial where a husband and wife were sentenced to prison. Their kids were taken away from them for possession of marijuana in their house.
Damn.
And that's how much things have changed.
Yeah.
But, a lot of my friends wound up going to prison.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's an interesting thing. Another season in my life that took place, and I guess it was, I'm trying to think of what year it would have been. It would have been in the 90s. Yes, it would, in the mid-90s. I started going to the prisons with some guys, and then I went ahead and pursued my own volunteer chaplain's certification in the state of Texas. And I started going to the prisons in Tennessee Colony. There's several prisons there.
And you got your chaplain?
What?
You got your chaplain?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I started going to the prisons, and I had access to go anywhere in the prisons I wanted to go. I mean, that's the way chaplains are. And sometimes they would give me a list of some people I needed to go talk to and tell them that a family member had died or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were, most of the guys I had one-on-one with were in what's called administrative segregation, which you could call it solitary, but because they're never in contact with other inmates.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because they don't have a window; they have a metal grate in the opening of where the guards can look in or whatever.
Right.
And when I would go to talk to them, like I'd be walking by and they'd all know because I wore a cross, and they would all know. They'd start yelling, "Chaplain, chaplain!" Some of them just want to talk.
Yeah.
But I would always stick my little finger through that bar. And they would take my little finger and shake it, and then they'd stick there. And that was just a sign of showing trust, basically. Yeah. But I think the point I was going to make is there was never a time, and I don't think there was ever a time, and I've tried to thinking back that I can't remember a time that I left the prisons where I made it home without having to pull over the car because I started crying so uncontrollably. Because I know for a fact, but for the grace of God, there go I. There's no reason other than the Lord intervening in my life, that I wasn't in prison.
Yeah,
I was arrested nine times before I was an adult.
Yeah,
for public intoxication, for theft, for you name it.
Yeah, I think it's easy for people to dehumanize those folks because they're in there and they're not. If that makes sense, but they get classified as an inmate or an offender, and that's all you need to know about that person.
Yep.
That's what we do.
No, they're people. They're real people.
A lot of little Billies in there.
Yep. And they I've got a box of letters and stuff from them, and they would make me stuff, and they'd get a piece of cloth and they'd do artwork on it and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's actually the truth. And, it's an interesting thing because I wound up initially, it seemed like I wound up I don't even like the word ministering, but if that be because that's spending time and sharing when talking with sex offenders.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of sex offenders that told me they did not want to get out because they knew they would do it again. And we don't realize that. It's an illness.
Yeah.
And they knew they would do it again, you know. So.
Well, as long as they keep telling their parole hearing people that story, they probably won't get out.
And I don't know if they've ever. I mean, I can remember reading and hearing, years ago that a true sex offender can never be reformed.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's if they've found a therapy or something that will actually reform them, but I kind of doubt it.
I would doubt it too. And our prison systems, it's supposed to be rehabilitation. That's how we sell this. That's how we sell the story to the public, but
definitely not.
There's no rehab involved there.
I've seen things happen in the prisons that the guards would not want to know I saw.
Yeah.
In fact, if you probably don't remember. It's been quite a long time ago. But at the Michael unit, there was a murder, and actually, I think it was the murder was committed by a guard, and the guards attributed some of the information that was getting out to the chaplains, that we were letting this information out, that what we were seeing, which wasn't true. It wasn't me for sure.
Yeah.
But so they wanted to ban the chaplains from being able to come in the prison.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause they didn't want to see what we were
right.
What we would see. But
yeah. Yeah, and it's gotten better over the years, but it's still a really disgusting environment, and there's no way to really fix it. And my favorite tidbit of information about the prison system that really puts it all into focus for me is the same year that I hope I'm getting this right. I think it's the same year that slavery was abolished is the year that they instituted the Texas prison system.
That's very possible.
I'm pretty damn sure that's true. Because
do you know that the criminal justice or the criminal incarceration system in this country is the largest, most profitable corporation in the country?
That's the second favorite fact.
Yep.
It is just absolutely.
It's a money-making thing. Those are they're private. People don't realize that.
A lot of them are. Texas doesn't have as many private, but it still has privates. Yep. And then nationwide, most states rely on private prison systems. And it's a racket.
Oh, yeah. It's a
money-making
racket.
And anybody that has even a brush of experience with the prison system knows that.
Yep.
It's a well-known fact. And it still goes on. Nobody bats an eye.
Well, hopefully that'll change someday, but who knows?
I hope so, Bill. Well, what do you got planned for the next 40 years?
I'll keep working. I love working. I'm really enjoying working with my son these days. That's cool. Like I said, I do steel fabrication, and I enjoy, like stuff like that. Planter out there we were looking at earlier.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. That's a solid piece of steel, isn't it?
But I enjoy doing stuff like that. I do a lot of tables. I don't know if you noticed that some of the tables.
I saw the piano table.
Yeah, stuff like that. That's kind of.
What do they call that piece from a piano?
I have no idea. That was from It was the only thing that's actually the piano is the steel.
Yeah, it's the steel plate that the action sits on top
of,
but I don't remember the name.
As you can see, I've got a couple projects over there. That's a 1955 Spartan mansion, and that'll get restored completely. I've already got it completely gutted out, and that was my plan this winter. But then I had my shoulder messed up first in December, and now I'm 3 weeks out of surgery. So
take it easy. Take it easy.
And then the other one's a 65, and it's in really good shape. Yeah,
okay.
That's a little bit to do on it. So, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do love to travel. I travel in kind of a unique way because I'm single.
Mm-hmm.
But the last big trip I took was I just left with my kayak on the roof of my truck, and at that time I had a Vespa on the back of the truck. and drove north almost 3,600 miles. I drove to where the ice roads begin in north of Yellowknife, Northwest Territory in Canada.
Okay. Wow.
And basically camped the whole way. I did camp the whole way. And I went there primarily just to photograph the aurora, which was amazing.
Did you get some good shots?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Nice. What do you shoot with?
A Canon 35 millimeter.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was when we go in. That was in Zambia.
Oh, did you take that?
Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of them.
If you can't see it off camera, it's a leopard, right?
Yeah.
And it is an incredible photograph.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting story, real quick. I'd been looking for a leopard, and I did a lot of foot safaris, I guess you'd call them. Mm-hmm. And I'd been looking for leopard was the only one that I hadn't seen. Mm-hmm. And the first pictures I've got is just like looking into the bush, and you can make out in amongst the leaves and everything some spots. Mm-hmm. So then I kept watching, and long story short, it seems like there was this warthog that was defending her den with young, and he was trying to get to the young. Mm-hmm. Well, she wound up taking off and charging him, and he came running, and he literally he's within 10 feet of me in that picture. And at that point I'm shooting the 200 millimeter lens, and I'm just click, 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 and I got tons of pictures of him.
And this was the best one.
Yeah, that's the one I just choose to print. But she wound up treeing the leopard, which is really weird. But she was going to defend her young. So.
Those wild hog, they're mean.
Oh yeah.
I don't know who wins that fight, but I don't know that leopard could do much damage to a wild boar.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. You asked what my plans are now. I'm real involved with an organization called Arise Africa.
Okay. In
fact, I had lunch with the director today. She called and wanted to take me to lunch today. And I think part of it was because my birthday was yesterday. But I've been to Zambia, and I worked on that's an interesting story, which if I've got a second, I'll just...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
She was a photographer for the NBA. I did their office space, and it's right on the corner of Allen and Fairmount.
Okay.
Arise Africa. And when they were unloading and unpacking, there were all these photographs of all these kids and stuff, and I just commented, I said, man, who does your photography? This is some great photography. And she says, well, I do. And I said, well, you're really good. And she said, yeah, I was a photographer for the NBA for 8 years. And then she wound up, and I'm hoping I'm getting this right, she wound up just doing corporate stuff after that, and was traveling around the world doing stuff for different corporations and stuff. Mm-hmm. And she landed in Lusaka, Zambia, which is the capital of Zambia. And It's a very, very huge level of poverty, extreme poverty. And she saw a real need for education. And so she initially, I think, just started sending books over. And Arise Africa was founded in 2010. And since then, I can't even remember for sure how many schools they've built. When I was there, they were building I want to say it's first through high school on a complex. It's a beautiful school. In fact, I've made some of the furniture here and stuff, and they were all shipped over there for the school, for the library and stuff. Yeah. And then they also have a boys' home and a girls' home for, orphaned kids and stuff like that. And that's really cool. So when I was there, I worked primarily on their buildings, and I was just volunteer. Mm-hmm. But I worked on not so much on the schools as on the boys' home and the girls' homes, and then the main complex where the staff lives and stuff. So. Mm-hmm.
Just doing everything you knew how to do.
Yeah, a lot of electrical and plumbing stuff. I'm very old school. I do everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I came from a time when a builder was a builder.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I can build a house from scratch and do every bit of it. So.
Yeah.
And for years, I just had electricians pull my permits because I knew so many of them, or plumbers pull my permits. And now I'm at a point where I just let them pull the permits and do the work. I just act more as a general. I still build all the cabinetry on our jobs. And I do a lot of the framing, especially if it's tricky framing, because I enjoy that. But
that's excellent.
But I'm wearing out.
You're wearing out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it feels that way. You just had a birthday. Your shoulder's jacked up.
Yeah, I got an artificial shoulder now. No, it's not artificial. Well, it's a replacement is what they call.
Yeah.
So.
But You'll get healed up and be back to kayaking in no time.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
I did a fair amount of kayaking for a while. That's a great workout.
Yeah,
It's a good way to get out.
I've got a Hobie Mirage.
Okay, that's
so
a $8,000 kayak.
That's exactly right. This is my third one.
Yeah.
My first one was a 17. My second one was a, I don't know, like a 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, it's a 23.
Yeah, those are badass.
I've
just
they're
never been
pretty
able
awesome.
to spend that kind of money on a kayak, but if I could, I would.
I always had a bass boat or something. You
Yeah.
know, and I hardly fish anymore when I go. I usually just me and my camera, and I love the bayou. I love anywhere I can get in the bayou and just get lost back in the big cypress trees. And
that's where the alligators are at.
yeah, but you know what? I've never been scared by an alligator.
Really?
I bumped a small one time.
Mm-hmm.
This one I was using my paddle because I was in such heavy
Foliage,
Yeah.
roughage.
And I bumped a little one, and I don't know if I scared him more than it scared me because I was being dead quiet, just barely moving.
Snuck up on him.
And I didn't see it, and it just made a commotion and took off and scared the crap out of me. But that's about it, you know.
Just startled you.
Yeah, they've never bothered me.
Well, maybe you're just not their flavor.
Well, must not be.
That's excellent. Well, I tell you what, we can certainly do this anytime you want, and we don't have to end it now, but as soon as you're ready, we'll tie this thing up.
This is as good a time as any. I guess I just basically like to encourage anybody that's listened to this to not give up.
Yeah.
And obstacles a lot of times can really work to our advantage if we let them. So.
And if the buildings are leaning in towards you, don't jump off the bridge.
There you
Right?
go. And I've never really remembered the details on that. You know, it's real frustrating. I was thinking about that this morning because I knew we were going to be talking. And at one point, I thought I remembered clearly him grabbing me as I was going over and pulling me in his car, but I really don't remember clearly how I wound up in his car. So.
That's the thing about them drugs. Kind of mangles up the memories a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for letting me be a part of your birthday, and I just love that we got to do this.
Well, I appreciate it, and I think that there is a need for this kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think that maybe if you do broadcast this, maybe it'll encourage people to do the same thing.
I believe so. And talking about your radio earlier took me back because I loved my little radio, and I couldn't tell you what brand it was, but it was just this old gray radio, and it had a volume knob, an AM/FM switch.
Well, mine was pre-FM.
Yeah, I had FM. Not quite that. The radio wasn't quite that old, but it did have FM, and that was it was either that or the CB. I had a small CB radio that I liked to jump on and just listen to the truckers bullshit back and forth. And
my brother was big into CB stuff. He loved that.
When I'd get brave enough, sometimes I'd key the mic up and go, hello. Probably 8 years old. I remember a woman getting on that radio one night, and she said, honey, how old are you? And I told her, and she said, you don't need to be on this radio. Because we were in Midland, Texas, and our house was right off I-20, so you can catch all those long haul guys going up and down El Paso down to Dallas. And yeah.
I don't know what station it was I used to listen to. It was a blues station, but I remember the disc jockey, his little saying was, when he'd go off there, he'd say, well, if you don't dig blues, check your shoes. You must have a hole in your soul.
That's a good note to end it on. Well, whoever's listening to this, this has been Bill Smith, and Andrew Turner was lucky enough to sit down with him after his 71st birthday, and it was a real honor. And a special thank you to Casey Smith for setting this up.
Well, thank you.
All right, brother. Another big thank you to Casey Smith and Bill for letting me come on out and do this recording for him. This was a special recording for me. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to do this recording with you guys. So thank you. Again, if you need anything from Fort Worth Roots, our email is media@fortworthroots.com. Thank you.